Hello, Internet. Welcome to episode 335 of the Assorted Calibers podcast. The second podcast is a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd, and with me tonight, the greatest hostess in the entire world. You know her. You love her. You're excited to hear her talk and wait for Weer'd to shut up. She's Erin Paulette. How you doing, Erin?
Oh, so last week it was the entire universe, but now it's only the world. I see how it goes.
See, this was the point. You said sometimes you go too far. That was no. It's the sometime Weer'd. You won't go far enough.
Hey, Weer'd, does this podcast make my butt look big?
It makes your butt look voluptuous.
I actually thought you were gonna do your go-to line of "I'd like to call my lawyer."
I decided to go. Let's see what's a word in my vocabulary that means big, but big in a good way.
Yeah, voluptuous is a good word.
Voluptuous is great.
Yeah.
Rubenesque.
How am I doing? Well, I am doing better than last week. Last week, I in hindsight, I think I was coming down with something because normally I'm too warm in the house. It's like, shorts and a t-shirt, but like for, if not all of the week, most of the week, it was sweatpants and a sweatshirt, long sleeves, in order to feel warm. And I was just kind of cranky in general, and I don't really know what caused it. It was just people, life. But today I feel better. I mean, I feel physically better. So I feel like I had something that was like not quite enough to give you a fever, but enough to make you feel kind of puny. So that's what's going on with me. Other than that, I don't really have anything interesting to talk about. My life has been pretty boring lately, and honestly, that's good for me.
Boring can be very, very nice. And yeah, I'm with you. I'm think I'm getting out of the woods here, but I've been having like this like off and on. I think my nose has been wanting to get a sinus infection, but I am refusing to allow it to happen. So if I sound a little bit more nasally than usual, I kind of got a nasally voice to begin with, but if I sound more nasally than usual, that's probably it. And that, and also the weather can't make up its mind. It's warm, then it's freezing, and all that. And my wife is on a business trip, and so I got up at 4 this morning to give her a ride to the airport. So I'm thankfully podcasting is one of the one of my pleasures in life, and so I'm now wide awake, but I was falling asleep on the couch just before I came down here. So
every time I start feeling sick, and every time Mom hears about someone getting sick, she always mentions, because Mom is big into herbal supplements. She's real big on Sambucus, which is made from elderberry. And it apparently, not only does it have, traditional history of being some kind of medication, but I don't know if I can find it again, but there was actually some sort of study that it was like, I mean, they weren't saying it was perfect, but it's one of these, it's not snake oil.
Mm-hmm.
So just because I'm thinking of my mom, you might want to consider getting an elderberry supplement for those days when you're just, your body thinks it wants to get a sinus infection.
I'll go the other way around on the, I think I talked about this before on the show, but like my sister-in-law mentioned that I think it's just a total stranger had come up to her in the grocery store and just mentioned that, I think she used the term black cumin seeds, were just like the key to ending. Like I think she was mentioned something about having she had long COVID for a while, and mentioned like, oh, get yourself some black cumin seeds and then it'll go through. And I'm just like looking it up, never heard of such a thing. And the species is Kalonji. Nigella sativa. Nigella seeds is one name. Kalonji is the Hindi word for them. They're very commonly used in Indian cooking and all that. And my wife and I started laughing. We found an article on the antiviral, antibacterial effects of Kalonji seeds on people, and the study was hot garbage, but I ended up having some anyway, just from cooking, and they're really tasty. They kind of taste a little bit like oregano when raw, and then when they get cooked, they produce a much more savory kind of almost a little bit like I don't know, just a very very savory flavor to them. So they're kind of like a MSG in a seed when cooked. And so I've been throwing those in everything anyway because they're delicious and it's going to cure all diseases.
Okay, so here we go. It was posted on PubMed, and it's from 2022. The pros and cons of using elderberry, aka Sambucus nigra, for prevention and treatment of COVID-19. And so it's talking about it having antiviral properties. And I mean, you can read the report because you can actually speak this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But they're basically saying, yeah, it has antiviral properties. So, it's not complete garbage. So there you go. You can take it. You can leave it.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those it's specifically the black elderberry. So like they're really dark. There's just tends to be a lot of antioxidants within any sort of dark plant pigment. There was actually it was a scientist that actually did a study on it where his grandmother had told him, oh, make sure to eat your colorful vegetables and all that. And he actually was like, why do they always say eat the colorful vegetables? And in fact, brightly colored vegetables are much, much higher in antioxidants, and antioxidants are really, really good for just about everything. It's a good point. I will say that I actually have stepped back. I'm being very, very cautious because it ended badly the last time I was doing it. But I'm doing the couple of drops in the nose bath. I've done it, I think, twice now. So that's it. I'm trying to keep it as little as possible. But boy, it blasts, like when the sinuses are getting real bad, it just blasts it out. So
you're talking about nasal irrigation with like a neti pot?
Yes. Yep. And I put about 3 to 4 dashes of Tabasco sauce, namely that's just vinegar, pepper, salt, and then you're adding a buffer solution to it with the saline packets that come with that, and the capsaicin has anti-inflammatory effects. It has some. It's definitely some antifungal stuff. That's proven. There's some talk about it being antibacterial, and then it just causes your mucous membranes to exclude huge amounts. Just goes through it, so just it pressure washes you out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a spicy food person, so it also that beautiful wave of endorphins. Mwah.
So why did you say you had stopped doing it?
Oh, because I was doing it like every day. Because it was awesome and I loved it. And then just suddenly one day, my sinuses just slammed shut. And like I literally could not even take a breath. Like you get a stuffy nose and if you pull real hard, you can get some pressure through. No, just they slammed shut, and it was like 4 hours, and then they relaxed and opened back up again. And it's one of those, and it happened twice in a row. Right after I'd done the Tabasco sinus rinse. And I'm like, oh, so maybe I should stop doing this. And so now I'm just doing it very, very sparingly.
So you're saying that your nasal passages just noped out?
Correct. They said, oh, the hell you are.
Okay.
So, yeah. It sucks. So now I am currently in an Icarus situation where I'm trying not to fly too close to the sun. But I have the power of a god.
Neither Icarus nor Daedalus were gods.
Yes, but Icarus was defying the god. That's the whole reason why Apollo got mad at him.
Yes.
And so I was humorously blaspheming, Aaron.
Oh, okay.
I was blaspheming for comedic effect. And that's actually something I wanted to mention. Actually, one great thing that we did this weekend is we went.
You blasphemed for comedic effect?
My wife and I went to see Taylor Tomlinson in Boston.
Okay.
And it was an absolutely great show. But I specifically wanted to say one of her opening comedians is a guy named Zach Towers, and I can put a link to one of his videos that I found online on there. He is a gay comedian, and it was his routine was heavily gay comedy, but he was absolutely. And I was telling my wife, I'm like, we got to keep an eye on this guy because it'll be really, really cool to go, oh yeah, we saw him when he was just a baby comedian. So yeah, Zach Towers, he's currently opening for Taylor Tomlinson, and he is definitely working worth checking out. And so that was a very, very good time, and it was a fun show. It was a very fun show. She's really a genius comedian. Like her both, I mean, she's funny, but also just the composition of the show is really, really good. And so this also makes a great transition to a great transition to the first story that I wanted to talk about, which was thankfully this happened several hours before I was in Boston, and I was in the theater district. So this was in Back Bay, which is actually the ritzy side of Boston. Two people ran into a Chick-fil-A in Back Bay, and they were being pursued by a man with a knife, and he was swinging the knife at them. It doesn't sound like either people were physically hurt, but they were very concerned about things. And luckily for them, there was a off-duty police officer carrying his personal firearm, and he ended up shooting and killing the attacker. And
yeah, it's worth pointing out that he did identify himself as a police officer to the knife wielder before he shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that is a good point, and challenging in. You could decide whether or not you want to challenge somebody if that wants to be part of your routine for all of that. But I will say that I watch a lot of body cam footage, and I find it hilarious that the police tell them what they need to do and what's going to happen if they don't do it, and they usually tell them multiple times, like, if you don't do that, I'm going to have to arrest you. If you don't do that, I'm going to have to arrest you. And then they get arrested, and then they act really surprised that they're in handcuffs and going to jail.
Well, how's that line go? No one's ever talked themselves out of a ticket or an arrest, but a lot of people have talked themselves into one.
It's absolutely have, yes. Another friendly reminder, if you think the cop is doing something entirely in the wrong, probably just a good idea just to roll with it and just mention it to your lawyer when you get a chance to talk with them. And you do want to talk with a lawyer. But yeah, this is the fact that it was an off-duty police officer. I like to point out the fact that we always hear this in stories. Oh, it was an off-duty police officer. Oh, the person worked as a security guard, and all of that. Well, I mean, in Boston, that makes it just a whole lot easier since most of the residents of Boston aren't allowed to carry anyway. I mean, has since changed, but again, it's the backlog for classes and things like that has since the NYSERPA case has not made it that much easier for people to get their permits, and carry culture is not strong here anyway, but that's just the one difference between this person, this person essentially getting praised for stopping the crime, and by the responding officers, and going in the back of the car themselves, and hopefully calling their concealed carry insurance provider. I will say one thing just to show what a place Boston is that. It's quoted specifically in the article. This is actually how I discovered about this, is people on the social medias were all posting this press conference where the Boston mayor, Michelle Wu, gave out a, heartfelt sympathies to the victim of this crime, meaning the person who was trying to stab people and got shot, and didn't really, throw a whole lot of love towards the people that got chased by a crazy person with a knife. So yeah, that's a hot take, but I'll just say I'm glad all the people were okay. And so yeah, and I'm glad that wasn't me, because again, I was in the theater district, and yeah, you have to go through metal detectors to get into any of the big shows.
Mm. Well, I mean, as you said, even if you had been carrying there, you would have been arrested, because everything's illegal in Massachusetts.
That is absolutely true. That is absolutely true. And that is why I have a membership to the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. Mm-hmm. All right, on to the next news story. This one, so I put this one in the show notes. I have seen a ton of people referencing a New York Times story that is very, very similar. I don't know how similar, because it's a New York Times story and it's behind a paywall, and I'm not going to pay them to read their stories. But I found this one, and I thought that it was a good story for us to talk about here on the Assorted podcast. But the title is "Trans Americans Turning to Guns for Protection." Aaron, do you want to take this away, or do you want me to keep yammering?
I feel like I want you to keep yammering, because neither one of us is objective when it comes to firearm rights, but I am even less objective about this, and I don't want to make our listeners uncomfortable, and maybe that's just me being silly. I don't know, but you go ahead and you take this.
Yeah, I will just say, and I'm not going to get overly political on this, but this is, of course, a very politically charged article, but it is essentially talking about how there are many trans people who are turning to guns, and in part because of the anti-trans policies being pushed forward by the Trump administration. And and I was actually mentioning before the show starts to air, is I know a number of trans people, and many of them I know through Pink Pistols, Operation Blazing Sword, and the various Second Amendment events that we attend. But also I know several others just from, in my day-to-day life. And every single one of them is involved in one way or another in the firearms community. Either they are gun owners, or they are interested in owning guns and learning about self-defense and all of that. And the ones that aren't Second Amendment activists are the ones that are interested because they are concerned for their safety. Mm. And yeah. I mean, I really want to say, I think a good chunk of that is selection bias, just because of who you associate with. Because seeing as how my position with Blazing Sword is to reach out to queer people, and I get a lot of pushback from all kinds of people, but trans people are one of them. And it's essentially a how dare you, we have been victimized. We are prone to suicide. Why would you want to do this? And so it's great that you've had that experience. I feel like you should be considered an outlier. Well,
but overall, so I'm glad when anyone, but especially queer people and especially trans people, become members of the gun community, not only for self-defense, but the fun, the camaraderie, and, a gun owner's a gun voter. I'm just, I'm upset. I'm bothered that this is the reason why. I would rather that they do it because, hey, this is cool, rather than I'm in danger. I mean, I'm never going to turn it away. It's more a case of it sucks that this is what it took to get you to get into guns. But, no matter what, welcome.
Yeah, it's also kind of just the reality. I know a upsettingly large number of cis women who got into firearms because they were assaulted in one way or the other.
Yeah.
And all that. Like, it's just a natural thing. It is a situation where, I mean, also, the modern gun push movement has been going on since the 1960s. So most of the people alive today were raised steeped in the world of guns are bad. We need to ban guns. We need to restrict the amount of guns in people. Guns cause violence. And all that. So it's pretty, I mean, I grew up anti-gun. I came to it naturally. So it's very possible for people to have that idea and then not be like me when someone says, hey, do you want to go shooting? And go, yeah, I guess I do. So instead going, no, I'm scared. I don't want to go. And that I could totally understand, especially given the amount of propaganda out there. But which leads back to this story on this is a good way to start, doing more and more damage to that propaganda wall. The fact that we've come to the internet and there's social media, and now it's no longer just the network news stations that are the ones that are essentially telling us the information. It's now, and you could talk to people all around the world and you could seek people out with all of that has absolutely helped. And the fact that the people that you can seek out with information on guns are getting more and more diverse is nothing but good for the Second Amendment. Mm-hmm. And also the fact that all of these articles, the New York Times one, I know Stephen Gutowski was talking about it on the Reload podcast, gave a shout out to Operation Blazing Sword and the Pink Pistols. So,
yeah, I mean, it wasn't just a shout out, but he actually mentioned getting someone from OBS on the show. Mm-hmm. And I mean, Stephen, on the off chance you're listening, I'm interested, but I really don't want to do video. If we can put up a still picture and just do voice, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah. And so, and hopefully that will get because I've certainly heard within various groups, oh, Pink Pistols is just a, log cabin Republican type group, and all that, when it really isn't. Just some people think it's conservative just because it allows conservatives to be in the space as well. It's nonpartisan. And so, yeah, you're 100% right. It is sad that this is the reason it's causing it, but all groups experience this. And so, however they come, and again, there's a lot of the people cited in here are the quote. Granted, I will admit I have not read. I've skimmed a lot of the article because it is a long one, but a lot of the people in this, I haven't read anybody that is right of center in here. So it's certainly showing that it's a lot more. Left-wing people are joining the gun group, and again, they are welcome, and they are and they're good, and hopefully that will be another essentially fertilizing the soil for getting us some pro-gun Democrats to rise up through the ranks. Because again, Second Amendment is not a partisan issue, and it shouldn't be a partisan issue, and so there's no reason for it to be that way. And
well, I mean, I would counter that it is a partisan issue, unfortunately, because that's how culture has made it. But I agree, it shouldn't be. None of the Bill of Rights should be partisan. We should all agree that these are our inherent rights, as human beings and guaranteed to us by the government of our country. But that's just not the case, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's all I mean is just there is absolutely a partisan divide. This last election, Trump was campaigning as the pro-gun person, Kamala Harris was campaigning as the anti-gun person, and Biden before that was also campaigning as the anti-gun person. And even though, again, we've stated before, I'm not quite sure how pro-gun Trump is, but he's certainly putting, flying those colors, and that line is a very standard line, and there's no reason for it to be. So the best way to kill it and bury it in a cornfield is to have more left-wing people becoming gun owners and letting people know that, no, don't take our guns. We need these guns. And you should want us to have these guns, because if you're out there campaigning, if you're a Democrat campaigning against Republicans and saying how terrible Republicans are and how much we want to get rid of them, and maybe that they're a threat to democracy and a threat to your existence, then maybe those people should have guns.
Mm-hmm. Well, everyone who wants guns should have guns.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. As I said last week with Xander talking about, people owning guns and people choosing not to own guns. Yeah. You have the right to free speech, but you also have the right to remain silent. You have the right to keep and bear arms. You also have the right not to. We don't judge.
Uh-huh. But there are some people who own gun companies that shouldn't.
Yes.
And so, look, I've tried to find a recent article, and I haven't. Perhaps my Google foo is weak. The only reference that I have seen is by it was on Blue Sky. I don't know if it's on Twix, but there was one from InRange TV talking about this. And then our favorite Canadian lawyer, Ian Runkle, talked about it. And this was, of course, the case of GWACS versus KE Arms. And there's a lot to it, and I don't know how much you, Weer'd, want to get into this, but for our listeners, the short version is that KE Arms won completely, and the GWACS approach was bad enough that the court was actually throwing shade at them in some of these requests. And while it's possible that GWACS could appeal because this wasn't ruled with prejudice, I started to say I don't think it'll happen, but then I've always been surprised by the stupidity of people, especially if there's truth to the rumors that it's owned by someone who is anti-gun and is trying to sue a gun company out of business. But at least for now, KE Arms has won.
Yeah, I was going to mention on that is that there are some fairly well supported rumors, is how I'll phrase it, that one of the major owners of GWACS is someone who is very, very openly anti-gun. They have certainly made some very anti-gun statements openly, and the theory is that they may have bought the company so that they could essentially buy a gun company so you can make them stop making guns. And that was very similar to a lot of the conspiracy theories out there that I would also say, if this wasn't the theory, how would you do it? If this was the theory, how would you do it differently? When Cerberus Capital bought out Remington, and then Remington started buying out a ton of different gun companies, and then it's now no more. It's gone. Like they're all gone. And now it's just various companies own various bits of intellectual property. But what was Remington is now gone forever. What was Para Ordnance is now gone forever. Same with Bushmaster and DPMS and a number of other companies. Their logos can come back up, and some people may have their tooling and all that, but what was left of those companies is all gone. What, with the exception of Bushmaster, because when all Remington did was buy the intellectual property and the logo for Bushmaster, and in fact they just left everything there. And the owner of the warehouse that housed Bushmaster said, "What do you want me to do with all this equipment?" And they're like, "Yeah, you can take care of it." So he took care of it by picking up the phone and calling the old plant manager and saying, "You want to keep making guns?" And that is Wyndham Weaponry. So if you would like a Bushmaster rifle, go to Wyndham Weaponry and order one of those, because that is more Bushmaster than anything that came out of Ilion, New York, with the name Bushmaster on it. It's all the old original main people, a lot of them all there, just working on the same old tools because they didn't take them.
I've been corrupted by the internet. I have to consciously fight not to call it Bush Hamster.
I do love the name Bush Hamster. But yeah, no, this is great. We've talked a bunch about KE Arms, and we're rooting for them, and so it is great to hear that it sounds like this is done. I can't imagine that they would take a stab at that, especially since it didn't seem like they were launching a very aggressive defense.
Well, I encourage our listeners to listen to this video. It's only like about 15 minutes long. And Runkle says at least once that GWACS should honestly be suing their lawyer for some of the really bad decisions that were made. One of them was, like, about a week before it was to go to trial, he petitioned to have 2 other companies added to the docket. And the court the reply was a rather snarky version of not just no, but hell no. And so, yeah, give that a listen. It'll tell you more than us fumbling about it. Listen to a professional.
I agree. All right, moving on to our first segment. Like many states, Michigan now has a red flag law, and like many of us, Xander isn't happy about it.
Welcome to Independent Thoughts with yours truly, Xander Opel. A couple years ago, Michigan passed a red flag law. I recently learned of an incident that happened since that fell right squarely within the coverage of such. A person behaved in a threatening manner that promised retaliation if they received the consequences of their actions. This person didn't brandish a firearm at their workplace, but apparently did the next best thing. This happened within some miles of the local courthouse, as well as a state police post. This behavior was both criminal and disgusting, and nothing was done about it. The people were sufficiently intimidated that they did nothing. Should a red flag be called on this individual, they would know who originated it. The person would need to be taken into custody, and from what little information I have, there might not be enough to be legally actionable. At best, using scare quotes, the person would have their firearms removed while free to take out their anger in other ways. Assuming, of course, all their firearms were confiscated. All their firearms. I honestly hope nothing comes of this. People I care about, people I simply know, could get seriously hurt or worse if this individual goes off their rocker and follows through on their threat. I wouldn't wish it on people I know and really don't like even. Guns aren't necessary for something awful to happen, and I can think of several ways it could. Honestly, there's a good workplace-related therapist just a few miles away that this individual could take advantage of, improve their outlook on things before they came to a head. Even just thinking about them now is helpful. The way it should for any good counselor, be they a therapist or a man of the cloth or a rabbi. I certainly didn't feel like my rights were in danger, and no discussions even touched on such when they helped me head off some issues I had. Better yet, workplace insurance covered it. I hope that's the case for the place I'm talking about as well. And now I get to a point I want to make. Never, ever threaten someone. The only time I would consider threatening someone is moments before I may have to pull the trigger, or if not carrying, take a swing. A job isn't worth someone else's life. Someone calling me out on what my actions are isn't worth someone else's life. For me, to threaten is to warn ahead of time a deadly act is imminent. It is only acceptable if the only other choice is to commit violence, to follow through with the threat. And like a cherry on top of a
sugar
sundae, it paints the rest of us in an awful light and gives anti-gunners all the more ammunition. I hope this individual comes to their senses and straightens their act up, or those they threaten can safely put this person behind bars if not. I also hope that there's enough others who keep their own arms nearby that anything can be stopped. A lot can happen in the several minutes for police to arrive. I know for sure that this individual isn't the only one around who is armed, and for that I'm very, very glad. Have fun, be safe. I hope I gave you something to think about. And another thing to think about is, if you do something or say something in front of multiple people, word will quietly get around, and folks will learn to be on the watch.
Yeah, this is really what we see with red flag laws. They're used to punish and attack people who really aren't a threat. I've been threatened with red flag laws. It appears to have been all talk unless the police do have a little bit of caution in their heart. And if these people contacted the police, they went, "Are you serious?" But yeah, literally just goons on the internet have said, "Oh, I'm going to red flag you." And luckily nothing has ever happened of it. But I do know some people who have been red flagged here in Massachusetts, and it was malicious and it was really awful for them. And then we have things like the Lewiston shooter, who was a yellow flag, not a red flag, but yellow flag's actually better than red flag laws if we're going to have one. And all that. Cops were told, hey, this guy's dangerous. This guy's threatened people and all that. And he owns guns. And the cops went, yeah, that sounds like it. Knock, knock, knock. There's his car. That's his house. Oh, he's not coming to the door. Must not be there. Let's go back to the station.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know how it is in Massachusetts, Weer'd, but with your red flag laws, can they be done anonymously, or does someone have to sign their name to it?
See, I don't know. I haven't actually read the law all the way through and all of that. I know that the people I know that have been malicious, it's been essentially domestic violence. It's been relationship stuff.
I mean, the reason I ask is because if you can do it anonymously, then that makes it very easy to target people like you were targeted and just, frankly, lie. And then they can, harass you with impunity. But if you have to sign your name to it, that dissuades some people, because then they can't just, prank call. They have to deal with the repercussions. And so if they're constantly calling it in, the police might go, what's going on with you? And so, yeah, if we have to have red flag laws, I do not believe in the anonymous, Stasi level narking on your neighbor.
Yeah, no, I don't believe that. And also, yeah, the people that have threatened me are people that I don't know. They're just anti-gun people that have found me in spaces where anti-gun people and pro-gun people clash. And they've decided that, oh, that's what we're going to do. And I guarantee that none of the people that have threatened me were in the state of Massachusetts. They just knew that's where I was, and they knew that they had those. And so that was something that seemed like a fun thing for them to say. And don't do that. As Xander said at the very, very end, don't go making threats to people. It's never a good thing. Don't flounce. If you're leaving a group, don't tell the whole world that you're leaving. Just leave.
This is not an airport. You don't have to announce your departure.
Correct. Yeah. So it makes me grumpy.
It's just unusual for you to be cranky. That's why I laugh.
Yeah. Well, I do get cranky from time to time, but I try to do it in the most amusing way possible.
I'm looking, and I don't recall if Florida can make anonymous reports or not. While you were talking, I was looking, and I wanted to be able to say one way or another, but I can't find it yet. I mean, when we talked about it in like 2018, I was conversant on it, but
I would have to say
if
the state was serious about it, they probably would. They might be able to blind the person from it. You may not be able to find out who called it in, but I would hope that the police would actually get that person's information, just because the whole premise, even in the anti-gun side, is that this is just a precursor to a trial, a court intervention. And so you do have the right to face your accusers. And so therefore somebody calling in a red flag law, even though, as far as I know, I haven't seen any instance where someone has sued somebody else for doing a false red flag law or for doing that. And it's the way it's written, it's actually would be pretty hard to do it, since you just have to believe the person is a threat. And it's that's pretty easy to do, is, they said something and I believed them.
Yeah, that is the problem when it becomes a matter of opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that's just why it's wrong. I am unaware of any instance where it's actually helped people. Again, if someone is a threat to others, even if can be done anonymously, they're going to figure out who did it. Or even if it's a third party who sees someone who is, that person's stalking their ex. You know what? She's not doing anything about it. I'm going to call in the red flag law. He's going to think it's her. And maybe the cops didn't get all of his guns. And also, they didn't take all his kitchen knives. They didn't take his car. They didn't take anything else that he can use to hurt somebody. Didn't take his fists. Like, he may suddenly now be really motivated to go to that next step. Same thing goes with if someone's going to harm themselves. If they are a risk to themselves, well, now you're tramping in cops who are possibly kind of nervous on themselves because they're going into a place where they know there's guns. And so all these cops are looking at you like you're going to hurt them and you're hurting yourself. And they're digging through your place and taking your property. And now they're just leaving because none of these laws have anything about, commitment, mental health, professional, medical treatment and all that. No, it's just take the guns and leave. And so now you're alone in your home that's been violated, with your property that's been taken, and you're still suicidal. Like, it's a terrible law. It's easily abused, and even if it works, it doesn't work. Aaron, let's talk about something that does work.
Right. In his segment, Miles talks about taking newbies to the range.
Hi, this is Miles with another episode of the Southpaw Corner. In this episode, I should be talking about the Henry Supreme rifle after putting the scope on it, but because of the extremely cold weather and my just work schedule in general, I have not had enough time to get enough shots downrange to really do it justice. So, in this episode, I'm going to do talking a little bit about what I've been doing the last 3 weekends. And that is training people to get their LTC here in Massachusetts. I started off with a single student 3 weeks ago. We went over the whole course material and we went to the range. And that went very well, with the exception that I had used my new GP100 in 22 long rifle as my 22 starter for teaching folks to shoot. And because of the heavier double action trigger pull, the gentleman had a lot of trouble keeping it on target. So after that, I've decided to switch back to my Ruger Mark III Hunter in stainless steel, It seems to work a little better for most shooters. Yes, it's a heavy gun, but that seems to help in some cases. And worst case scenario, if I see they're shaking too much, I will tell them to lower the gun, put the safety on, and take a breather before they continue shooting. And that seems to work very well. Then last weekend, I had another class of seven students, which I did have to split up between a couple of days to get all the shooting at the range in because of the new requirements here in Massachusetts. It is required, which I do think is a better way of doing it anyways, and I usually encourage people to go to the range with me anyways. And so I taught the class, and because I'm having a hard time finding a local classroom to do the teaching in, I've been doing it in people's homes. And this one was 7 students sitting around a dining room table. The classroom went pretty well, except for I did realize I have one major limitation doing it in people's homes where I don't have extra equipment, was I had to share my laptop screen to show the slideshow that goes along with the presentation, which wasn't terrible sitting at a table, but I realized there was going to be issues. So I did a little research, and I ended up buying a laptop second monitor that runs off USB-C, so I didn't have to worry about this. That really improved what I could do, and things went very well. Then came time to go to the range with those folks. Now, again, I'm having issues with the local range, not willing to rent me range time so I can bring all the students at once. I have to do it using my guest privileges at the range, which means 2 at a time. So that night, or that afternoon, I should say, I was able to get 3 of them to the range. All went very well. But now I have to work all week. So what I had to do was this weekend I had another class on Saturday, and Sunday I was just going to have to get everybody to the range for both those classes, which worked out just fine. And everything went very well. And the new laptop monitor worked great because the second home I did it in, we were sitting around a loft sitting area. No TV or anything for me to hook up to, but I had my secondary monitor. And I set my monitor up, my computer facing me, and the backup monitor facing, right behind my computer facing the class. And it worked very well. Everything went great in the classroom again. And then went to the range. I was able to do on Saturday afternoon 4 of my students, which went very well again. No issues. Again, I started off with my Ruger Mark III, and then I moved on to my Canik Rival in black. Not that it made a difference to the color, with a red dot sight, or in this case, actually a green dot sight. And the only issue I ran into there was the first student who shot the Rival. She, even though told to look for the green dot, she found the red fiber optic sight post up front, and her first shot she aimed with that, which made it go quite high. No major issues, like I said. It went high. So I said, nope, you're looking at the red or green? She's like, red. I'm like, okay, that's the front sight post. That's not the right thing. Bring the tip down until you see a green dot. And she's like, oh, there it is. And the rest of her shots were right on target. She did very well. The other thing I noticed, especially with some of the truly new shooters shooting the Mark IV, was they were so nervous and so excited. The first couple of shots they would take, they would forget that there's a rear sight, and they were just looking at the front sight, and the shots are going all over the place. As soon as I noticed that they were really not hitting target where they wanted to be, I would say, well, where are you lining up your front sight and the rear sight? And they go, oh, I forgot completely about the rear sight. I was so nervous, I just didn't even think about it. I'm like, that's okay. Now try again, but use the rear sight, and they would do very well. Now the thing that makes this an interesting one is today, when I brought them to the range, I had brought a little something for myself to shoot, because I did have a couple hour break between 2 of the groups. And so I brought my Ruger 5.7 because I'd finally picked up some ammunition for it. And I was going to do some first shots and see how that went. Well, one of the folks had a little bit of trouble getting things down pat, so I feel comfortable issuing their certificate. So it took a few extra magazines of 9mm, which means that I didn't have a lot of 9mm extra towards the end. And my concept when I bring people to the range for their shooting, they have to shoot the 22 and they have to shoot the rifle. After that, I usually have 3 other guns that I let them choose which they would like to try if they want to try any, or they can even shoot the ones we already did. And that is, I usually have my Canik TP9 Elite SC for a subcompact, and I usually have my Ruger P95, as well as my Smith & Wesson 686 with 38 specials. And because I was running low on 9mm, I was trying not to have to run home in between and get more ammunition, which I could have done. I said, you know what? I have this other one here. I'm going to shoot it to give it some first shots and, make sure everything's functioning properly. I'll take a couple of shots with it, show them how it works, and if they want, let them try it. So at that point, the rest of my students did shoot the 5.7, and I will tell you, if the 5.7 ammunition ever comes down to less than 50 cents a round on average for training ammunition, I will probably put it in between the 22 and the 9mm because it's a great step. Yes, it has a lot more noise than any of them, but the recoil is so much more manageable and it gives people more confidence. And it works very well. And I am very impressed with the Ruger 5.7. Yes, it is only one of two 5.7 pistols available to me here in Massachusetts. That and the FN. I know Smith & Wesson's coming out with a banned state compliant version, but currently it is not available here. So I have a choice of the Ruger or the much more expensive FN, and there was a used Ruger 5.7 at the counter. I bought it. And like I said, if the ammunition cost comes down enough, I will definitely keep it in the rotation of guns for people to use because it does make a big difference. Instead of having to go from 22 up to 9mm, that extra step in between would be so much nicer. And if I can find a way to afford to keep that in there, I will. And like I said, having the price come down to even less than 50 cents a round, I would be very happy. But overall, these are things I've learned when doing training, and I try to, every time I teach somebody, find something that I can do to improve how I teach the class. Yes, the curriculum doesn't change, but what I say, do, how I demonstrate things, if I can do anything to help them improve or help myself teach them to do better, I do. Even talking to Weer'd and Aaron and the guys during one of the other shows, Aaron was talking about, the proper stance, and she said that she described it to somebody as like you're squatting with a dumbbell in your hand at the gym to get the proper stance. And that stuck in my head, and I've used that ever since she said that. Matter of fact, I think it was when she was talking about going to the LGC annual meeting last year. So whether you're teaching as an instructor for money or you're teaching as a friend showing another friend, whenever you're teaching somebody, if you can improve what you're doing each time, whether it's little things like how to describe the squat for when you're taking the proper shooting position, or finding a firearm that works better for your students, the better. And as I tell each and every one of my students, if they want to learn anything, shoot anything else, learn how to shoot anything else, just let me know. And I'm more than happy to just bring them to the range. They just don't have to do anything else. Just let me know and I'll bring them. Yes, I'm going to have them pay for the guest fee and the ammunition we use, but that's the only thing I charge for after the class. I don't ask for, them paying me for the time, because I want them to feel comfortable and happy with what they're doing. And that is how I teach. And that's also my first shots on the Ruger 5.7. I will say that I do need to adjust the sights a little, because it does seem to shoot a little low for everyone who tried it today, including myself. So I'm going to be working on that in the future as part of my next segment. And with the Ruger 5.7, I am going to do something I've never done before. And that is I'm going to try putting in a different trigger, because this is not ever going to be a carry gun. So I have no problem putting in a different trigger to try to make it a little better. Because the one that's on there works well, but it could definitely use improvement. And I probably will also buy one of the optics plates and put in an optic on it, because, well, that's who I am, and because of my eyesight, I prefer an optic. This may have been a long, kind of rambly segment because of what it was, but I think it's something that people really should think about and know about. And if anyone has any questions or has any suggestions for this, just let me know. I'm usually haunting the Facebook page, or you can just message Weer'd or Aaron, and I will definitely take into consideration anything that you say. Thank you. Safe shooting.
So, first of all, Miles, what you were thinking about, yes, that was indeed when I went to the Liberal Gun Club's annual convention. And there was actually a segment on it here on the podcast where I and Lara Smith and another gentleman whose name escapes me at the moment, we all talked about the amazing newbie. And so she was... I think she had a Mantis system, actually, but she didn't have the pose right. And the gentleman who was there didn't really know what to do, and he didn't want to touch her. And sort of like in Airplane, where the woman says, "Excuse me, stewardess, I speak jive," I go, "Don't worry, I speak woman." And I say, "Okay, so imagine you're at the gym and you're doing squats." And and she got it just instantly. It's like, oh, right. Yeah, you want me to stick my butt out more, and, my knees are slightly bent, and so on and so forth. And she got it instantly. So that's what you're thinking of. The other, I don't know, part statement, part question, because you're talking about 5.7 ammunition bridging the gap between 22 and 9mm. What's wrong with 380? That's like 30. I think it's around 30 cents a round. When I teach new shooters, I start off with the 22, and then I go up to 22 Magnum because I've got that, and then 380, and then 9mm. So that's just me.
And I'll note that 5.7 is within striking distance of 22 Magnum. We can hem and haw about internal ballistics, but they're very, very similar. But yeah, 380 is great. The one argument I would have for 380 is that there are a lot more these days than there used to be, but it's really good to have a lock breech gun, because the straight blowback ones can be kind of punishing.
So I don't know about the internal mechanics, but I do know that Mom bought like a Ruger Bodyguard in 380, and it was, a polymer pistol, and it was crap, because it was more than snappy. The recoil started out uncomfortable, and then after a magazine of 6 shots, it was just like, I don't think I want to do this again. Mm-hmm. But then I started using the Colt Mustang Pocket Light that I got from my dad. And so shooting the exact same rounds, maybe it was because it wasn't polymer, it was metal, I don't know, but it went from punishing to, oh, this is fun.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know how much of that was the action, how much of that was the way the gun was designed. But yeah, the type of pistol plays a role in 380 recoil, that's for sure.
Yeah, and there's another, interesting aspect too is Miles talks about like heavy gun versus light gun, and it's an interesting conundrum because of course a heavier gun's going to soak up a lot more recoil and therefore it's going to be a lot more steady in the hand and all that, and super duper duper light guns are absolutely punishing. The Oddpulse Altor or the titanium cylinder scandium framed Magnum revolvers that they make out there are just brutal to shoot, but also a lot of shooters, especially ones that don't have a lot of upper body strength, may find that a lighter gun is easier because you spend a lot more time holding the gun out and making sight alignment than you do actually pulling the recoil, especially if I'm standing there beside you going, all right, nice and slow, because we definitely do not want to do the spray and pray, especially with a new shooter. And one last one, and again, this is a cautionary tale for everybody, is I took a green shooter. This person had been shooting before, and I had made some assumptions that they had the basics down pretty good. And I'm sitting there beside her watching her shoot, and she's being very, very safe and all that. But I'm looking at the target, and I'm not seeing any holes show up. She's shooting a little 22 carbine, and no holes are showing up at the target. She's like, where am I hitting? And I'm like, I'm not really so sure. And then I saw a chip of paint come off the baffle near the ceiling.
Oh, no.
And I went, hold on, stop. So what were you doing? And she decided that it was just a little too tough getting that front sight into the valley of the rear sight. So she just was like just using the front sight only. I'm like, no, you need to do that. So, yeah. So I've made it a point that don't ever assume if someone's a new shooter that they know like that they've got all the basics down pat. Talk about sight alignment. I like drawing a picture of what the sight should look like. That's my favorite thing to do, and all that. But if you're just using the front sight, the rounds aren't going to show up on the paper.
The thing that I really dislike about iron sights is that there doesn't seem to be any universal standard for how you acquire the sight picture. Is it, lollipop on a stick? Is it, what's the term, quarter hold? Mm-hmm. Or, you completely obscure the target with the front sight. We've got guns that do all of those.
Yep.
And it's just, can we just please agree on a universal standard? That would be great.
Yeah. We can we can agree on a universal standard, and then there'll just be one more standard. It's like the idea of charging cables.
Yes, I remember that XKCD strip.
Yes. But yeah, no, that is absolutely a thing. And I just realized like I prefer the dead on hold. I like to if I'm shooting with a fiber optic sight or 3-dot sights or all of that. I like to put that center dot right where I want the round to go.
It seems more intuitive to me.
Yeah, that is my personal preference. I think it's. I believe the lollipop sight, the 6 o'clock hold. I think that came from target shooters who actually want the target to not be obscured at all, so they want to see where the bullet is going to land just over the top of their perfect sight picture, and all that. Versus I'm more of a combat minded shooter where just I am putting the front sight right on my target, lining it up with the rear and going to town, and all that. But hilariously enough, I have two semi-auto rifles that my daughter shoots, and one of them is it's an old Sears single shot cricket rifle. that she's kind of outgrown. She doesn't have the patience for single loading anymore, and she's a perfectly fine shooter to be trusted with a semi-auto. But the other one is my Remington Nylon 66 that I just brought out just for the hell of it, because it's my newest 22 carbine, and it's older than me. But yeah, just happens to be, and they're both set up for that 6 o'clock hold. And so I'm unfortunately raising a daughter to learn to enjoy the 6 o'clock hold. We'll fix that when she gets into center fire.
Mm. So what's the third kind? The one that I couldn't remember the name for.
The third kind of what?
Of sight picture.
Oh, I just know 6 o'clock hold, dead on hold. Yeah.
I thought that there was some sort of weird, like halfway between the two kind of thing that seemed really awkward. I don't know if my brain's just inventing it or not.
Yeah, I don't know. Someone will text me when this show comes out. And you know who those people are who are going to text me?
Our listeners.
Yes.
Look, I've got nothing against the listeners. It's just like I hate feeling stupid, but I will admit when I don't know something.
Yeah, it's Aaron. There is nobody who sounds more dumb than the people that are peak Dunning-Kruger. Who they are telling you. I love the people that like. You understand that, like, I am a gun nerd and I just spend all my time reading and talking on podcasts about guns, and you're going to argue with me as a complete layperson who doesn't know the difference between an AR-15 and AK-47 about the gun laws in such and such a state? That's a bold strategy, Cotton.
Oh, okay. So according to at least one forum, you've got point of aim shooting in addition to 6 o'clock hold, and then dead on.
Okay.
I don't know.
So how's the point of aim lineup?
I
don't care.
I don't care enough to dig into it right now because we're trying to wrap up.
If it's not dead on hold, it's wrong.
I agree.
Even though Hickok 45 has been very, very open about the fact that he prefers the 6 o'clock hold. Sorry, Hickok, we love you, but you're wrong.
But you know who isn't wrong? Our listeners.
Our listeners, and even the ones that like to do, like a 6 o'clock hold, even they're the ones who are right. We need to thank you, each and every one of you. We really appreciate you listening to the show and putting up with Aaron and I. But we need to give an extra special thanks to all of our supporters on Patreon. You guys help keep the lights on. You keep the show running. You defer the costs it is running a podcast. So if you're interested in that, you can go to patreon.com. So it's Assorted Calibers Podcast to sign up. It's not a tip jar. We're not begging. It's a place where you can buy stuff. You can buy the most popular one is our ACP blooper reels. We've also got the ACP film tracks and the ACP Magnum.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts and Pocket Casts. Subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends, both online and off.
I got a blog. It's called weerdworld.com. That's WEERDworld.com. And you can hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
And you can theoretically get more from me if I can ever get out of this creative slump at Linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette, all one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
I mean, honestly, I shouldn't be that hard on myself. After all, I mean, you claim you have a blog, but it's just the podcast at this point.
I put all my creative energy into podcasting. Technology moves on, Aaron.
Yeah.
And by the way, Aaron, because you went so low on that, I think we might have hit a perfect fifth.
Oh, nice. Okay. So he sucks at making these, and tonight, my heart's not in it. Our improvisational ability is assorted, and so's our podcast. Good night, everyone.
Good night.